So 3 months ago, I hired a full-time producer to help support the YouTube channel. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that it has completely changed the way that I make videos. We often hear from big creators about the importance of hiring or having a team, but rarely do we get to see what that actually looks like and what the reality is of going from being the only person working on your channel to now splitting and sharing tasks with somebody else. So today, I want to share everything that I've learned over the last 3 months of working with my producer. I'll cover how we work together, how it's changed my channel, whether or not I think it's worth it, and some tips I have for anyone considering hiring a team member of their own. But first, why did I decide to hire a producer, and what the heck even is a YouTube producer in the first place? If you're not familiar with the term producer, don't worry, you are not alone. I definitely had no idea what it was either until I started looking to make a hire for my main channel. So I knew that I needed to hire someone, but I wasn't sure exactly who I needed to hire or what I needed to hire for. And at that point, I was considering a bunch of different options. I was thinking about hiring maybe an editor or a title and thumbnail designer, maybe even a scriptwriter or a researcher, but I just wasn't quite sure. So I talked a lot with my other YouTube friends who had teams at that point, and this is what they told me. They said to first make a list of all of the tasks that went into my process of making a YouTube video, and then to go through each and every one of those tasks and rate them according to one, how long it took me to do those things, and two, how much I enjoyed doing those things. And then from there, you could identify what bottlenecks you had, what parts of the process were maybe taking way too long, and were the things that maybe you did not like to do as much. And those were the tasks that you would hire out, starting with the tasks that took you the most time. Now, unfortunately for me, or I guess kind of fortunately for me, I liked doing every part of the process, genuinely. I genuinely enjoyed everything. And so for me, the thought of hiring something out and kind of relinquishing part of the process, any part of the process, felt difficult, and it felt like something that I did not want to do, especially because I had tried hiring out editing in the past with not so great results. That's probably a topic for another video, but that was, I think, something holding me back from making a hire for a long time, is just not wanting to hire out all of a particular process, even if everything took me a while. But the major unlock for me came when I realized that something called an assistant editor existed. And essentially what that meant was you could hire someone who didn't do the full edit, but they would come in and just take your raw footage and do a rough cut for you, or a part of the editing process for you. And I realized, hey, this can apply to all parts of the YouTube process as well. I could hire someone to essentially do assistance or support in each and every one task, or as many tasks as I wanted, whilst I could still take over from them at any point that I wanted. Essentially, we could do both. And as it turns out, in this industry, there is a term for someone who does all of the things, and that term is producer. And honestly, that entire hiring process was a multi-phase ordeal that definitely deserves to have its own video, just breaking down everything that went into how I made that hire and what I thought about. So hold your questions for that. We'll get to that in a different video. And I'll put up an excerpt of the job description somewhere on screen here. But essentially at that time, what I was hiring for was someone who could help with some title and thumbnail mockups, some research assistance, maybe some scripting assistance, and some editing assistance. And the timing of this hire and why I decided to hire a producer at specifically that point was because I had committed myself to working on a 4 videos in 4 weeks challenge, essentially forcing myself to increase my pace of uploads, going from literally working 3 months on a single video to 4 videos in 4 weeks, which was insane. I don't know what I was thinking, but I knew that I couldn't do that challenge alone. So I was like, well, if there was a time to hire someone, bring on more extra support to help me get these videos across the line, it would be now. So after 138 applicants, 17 interviews, and 2 paid work trials, I hired Joelle. And going into making this hire, I had a lot of excitement, but also a lot of fear. What I had heard from others was that hiring is one of those things where if you find the right person, the product is greater than the sum of its 2 parts, and it can feel like magic and can feel irreplaceable. But I'd also had not so great hiring experiences before, and there's definitely the possibility when bringing in someone new that they take a long time to ramp up. And maybe at the beginning, things take slower than they would have done with just yourself. And because I was bringing him in specifically for a particular challenge where speed matters, there was a lot of questions over, will he be able to get up to speed in time? And will he be able to actually add value and help as opposed to hurt the process? But luckily for us, the hiring process ended up going as smoothly as I could have ever imagined. And part of that was due to just how incredibly talented Joel is. He brings so much to the table, so much skill, so much life. And I think it really is a testament to just who he is and how quickly he was able to jump into things, starting to add value from literally day one. And at the same time, I also feel like a big reason why we were able to operate so efficiently and effectively working together as a team was because of these systems and processes that we had put in place since day one, and kind of both on my side and then things that we did together to continue moving forward throughout the entire 4 videos in 4 weeks challenge and beyond. And so I want to go through some of these processes and systems that we've done together to give you an idea of what that might look like and some tips that we have found incredibly useful in working together as a team. And we'll start with organization, because when you go from doing everything just by yourself to now working with somebody else, there's this shift that happens in terms of where information lives and how it's communicated. When you are just working by yourself, you don't need to communicate anything. All the information just lives in your brain, and you can immediately just think about, when is something due? What should I be working on right now? And just know. Versus when you're working with someone else, now you have to have this transfer of information. And they, especially when you're just beginning, they don't have that intuition built to just assume what they should be doing at any one time. And so one of the most important things that we did from literally day one was establish a central source of truth when it came to the organization of videos and the calendar and who would be doing what. So this is the content calendar, and I know that it looks completely chaotic at first glance, and it might be, but I promise you this has been one of the biggest places of just alignment and structure that has been in place for both Joel and I as we work together, and I truly don't know how we would function without it. So here is how we use the content calendar. Essentially, we will break every video into all of the tasks needed in order to complete the video. And then each person gets assigned a task to be done for that video. And then based on when we need to upload the video, we will work backwards and determine who needs to do what on exactly which day in order to get the video done. And how we do that, you'll see here, is we kind of have this shorthand. Green emoji is Joel is doing something, blue emoji is me, Aprilynne is doing something. And how we use the content calendar is we'll sit down in the beginning of the week and plan out what the content calendar looks like for that week. So for instance, this is today, and we see Aprilynne film second channel video. That's what we're doing right now. Hello. And today or the day before, we'll look and plan out who needs to do what for the next week ahead. And then as we get closer to next week, where we don't have more calendar built in, we'll look at the next week ahead and say, okay, what video are we working on next? And then who needs to do what on what day to be able to do this. And this has been so incredibly useful because at any time, either of us could just look at the calendar and know, what is the other person doing today? What should we be doing today? And also immediately know by taking a glance at this, are we on track? Are we on schedule? Or are we behind schedule? This is also useful because anytime we have some sort of conflicts come up or anything to set us behind, like maybe one of us gets sick or maybe one of us has travel plans, we can take a look at the calendar and say, let's say I wasn't able to film today. I'll just be able to drag that into something that I do tomorrow. And then maybe in that case, the white screen animations, I might need to make myself go into another day for. And then music might take a day and a half instead of just the one day. And that's kind of how we would restructure the calendar depending on if anything comes up. So at any one point, the calendar is always up to date, and it just takes so much confusion out of the mix and cuts down on how much back and forth we need to have in terms of who is supposed to be doing what and whether or not we're on track. So that's how we organize everything and how the responsibility of different tasks break down. And while I initially hired Joel for some assistance with title and thumbnail mockups, with some research, with maybe some scripting, and with some editing, this is mostly how the breakdown actually looks today. So we'll both ideate on some ideas, and then I'll pick the idea that we work on. And we'll both brainstorm titles, and he'll come up with thumbnail concepts. I'll do the research, and then I might ask him to do some extra research from time to time. I will outline and script from that research, and sometimes I tap him in for feedback on that script. We will annotate the script together, and what annotation is we go through the script line by line and comment out what is visually going on screen during every one part of the process. That's been also absolutely huge in aligning style, which is something we'll get into later, because we are very aligned before we even go into the edit of what the edit will look like. He'll turn those annotations into a shot list. I will take that shot list and film both the A-roll and any B-roll. I'll get the raw footage over to him. He'll do the rough cut and then send that back to me for feedback, and then he will execute on most of the editing from the annotations, but I will make most of the illustrations, or what we call white screens. Once we have a finalized timeline, I will do the music and sound effects, and then at that point, the video will be done and I will upload. So that's the process that currently works for us, and this process has evolved over time and will continue to evolve over time. When Joel was first brought on week 1, all he did was just editing. And then week after week, we would add in something more, to the point where right now he's doing so incredibly much, and will probably continue to do a lot more in the future as just scope of work expands. Now I want to move into what the day-to-day actually looks like, and what the kind of tips, systems, and processes we have in place for the day-to-day are in terms of how we're able to work together effectively. So we'll start off with probably one of the best things that we do, which is our daily stand-up calls. And when I say stand-up, it's not stand-up like stand-up comedy. I wish, how fun would that be if we just did stand-up comedy every day, but no. Daily stand-ups are kind of taken from the tech world, just a daily meeting that you have to sync up. And what that looks like for us is that every single morning at the same time of that morning, we will have a call. This is blocked on our calendar for an hour. Sometimes this takes less than an hour, sometimes it takes more than an hour, but it's there every single day. And we always follow the same structure of the call. We'll start usually with some small talk, just, chit chat, catching up. And then afterwards, we'll follow the structure of how did yesterday go? And what are you planning on doing today? And then finally, what are the blockers that exist that's preventing you from doing what you need to do today? This structure helps us feel like we're in sync, that we know what the other is doing. This is also where if we fell behind the day before, we can go into our content calendar and make adjustments from there. And also in that first month, especially of working together, we also did something at the end of all of our stand-up calls where I would just ask an icebreaker question that we would both answer. And it could be super random things like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Or do you prefer cats and dogs? Or where did you grow up? Or just things like that. And in that first month, I felt like we were able to bond quicker than I've typically been able to do in the past. And I think one of the reasons for that is probably just the 4 videos in 4 weeks challenge and how much work we went through, kind of trauma bonding. And I feel like another reason why we did so was because we made that intentional effort to break through just the normal, let's talk about work, to get into who we are as people and just share more of that. This really does depend on what sort of working relationship you want to have. For me particularly, I always knew going into a hire that I wanted a small, close-knit team. And I knew that I wanted someone on the team who I felt was not only just a great team member, but also someone that I could genuinely be friends with. And that was definitely a very intentional act on my part to build that into the culture, to now at the point where, I genuinely feel like I have made a friend, which for me is an absolute win. I know that daily stand-ups are not necessarily feasible for everyone, and it does entirely depend on what your own preferences are when it comes to your own communication style. What I would recommend is, from the very beginning though, determine what your own communication style is. How often are you communicating, and what is the format of that communication? Is it on a form of a weekly call? Is it entirely async? What is the expectation in terms of responsiveness? So for Joelle and I, we have our daily stand-ups. We also have our Discord, where that's the place where we communicate anytime when we're not on a call. And having that set in stone before you hire someone can just be incredibly useful in making sure that you both have the same expectations of what level of responsiveness both of you need. It can lead to a lot of frustration if you are expecting a certain level of responsiveness and they don't know that you're expecting that, and then maybe they're not being as responsive as you want them to be, or maybe they're over communicating when you would prefer for them to just go off and handle things themselves. So either way, from day one, establishing this is the way we communicate, and also in the hiring process, establishing this is how we communicate and making sure that they jam with that can be really useful in making sure that you hit the ground running from day one. Another thing that was really helpful for us in being able to get up to speed very quickly was, especially in the beginning, having as tight of feedback loops as possible. And when I say feedback loops, I mean the loop of assigning a task to him completing the task, and then getting feedback on how he did that task. Instead of what normally happens sometimes when you work with an editor, where you give them a video and then they work on the entire video and then they come back saying, this is a video, any revisions? And then you have to go in and be like, if there's a lot to do, especially in the beginning when they don't really understand your style yet, you just have to make a ton of different comments. Joel, he would do a portion, and then maybe in that 3-minute portion, I come in and say, these are all of the changes to make. Then I'm like, okay, this is what she means when she says this. This is what her own style is. This is how she operates on her channel. And then is able to apply the feedback from that clip to the whole rest of the video as he moves forward. And so then by the time he's edited that first entire video, in the time where normally someone has gotten 1 feedback loop, he's gotten 5. Getting those super tight feedback loops helped him adjust to my style and my taste on a pace that was truly remarkable. Now, I do think that he did already have some underlying alignment of taste and style coming into the role. That's one of the reasons why I picked him and hired him. And just the pace of feedback loops was what really made it so that at this point, it's like, I swear we have a hive mind. We can look at something and, I would say maybe 7 times out of 10, we look at a phrase of a script and we both know what should be going on screen during that time. It's still an iteration process and it will continue to get closer and closer, but that was really important in him getting up to speed. Moving into the second half of the second month is when that shifted a bit. And so at that point, he had more of a fundamental understanding of what potential new editing tactics would be very outside of my wheelhouse and style that maybe shouldn't be introduced versus which ones I just haven't done before, but if they were added would enhance the style itself. And that's, I think, when a lot of the magic started happening. I mean, truly, I felt like magic started happening from day one, but it just reached a new level when it got to the point where he was introducing things that I had never considered before, but that as soon as I saw, I'm like, wait, that is so cool. Yes, absolutely, let's do it. The last tip that I'll mention in terms of how we work together that I think that anybody working with somebody else should do is we do a post-video reflection. And in this reflection, we go through a couple course sections. The first one we go through is timeline, and we think about how long did this video take to make? And was this longer than we had planned for? Was this shorter than we had planned for? What did that division of time look like? And if we are unhappy with how much time it took, what parts of the process can we make more efficient moving into the next video? The second section we have is process, likes, and improvements. So we think through the process of making the video itself in terms of how we work together, how we pass things back and forth, just little things like that. And we think about what were process adjustments that we made that we really like, and what were parts of our process that we think could be improved, made more efficient for next time. The third section that we have is quality. And I really love that we have this section before we upload because we really reflect on how we feel internally about the quality of the video that we had just made before being biased by how the audience responds to it, positively or negatively. And the last section that we have in our post-video reflection is well-being, which is more in terms of how was our quality of life during the process of making this video? Because both of us really are overachievers and both of us strive for excellence. We strive to do the best that we can. And because of that, we can both kind of get carried away sometimes with just doing so much work that maybe things start to fall on the wayside. And sometimes there is a time and a place for sprint mode. The first month of us working together was just sprint mode all the time. And we also know that sprinting forever is not sustainable. And so this is just our time to check in on how did we feel about our quality of life during the creation of this video? Did it go too fast? Did it feel maybe too slow? And if we are not feeling so great on the well-being wise, that's really important to know so that going into the next video, we can think about what can we do to change things so that it does feel sustainable long-term. So that's overall some of the main processes, systems, and tips that we do on a regular basis to work together in the most efficient and effective way so far. Again, I will not claim to be an expert on all of this. It's been 3 months, but I figured I would share it all in case it would be helpful to you. And looking at the channel itself and what it looked like before bringing on Joelle and what it looks like now really has changed in a lot of ways. It's changed in pace of production for sure. We're producing so many more videos than I was doing alone, but it's also changed in terms of my own vision. I think that going from being completely alone working the channel, yes, I dreamed big, but a lot of my dreams were hindered by the fact that I was doing everything alone. And so trying to think realistically about what can I actually get done in a day or in a month or in a year. Versus with him now, just being able to be supported by someone else who is just incredibly good at what they do. And now when I think about the vision for what the channel could be, it's just so much bigger. I feel like there are so many more possibilities and all of them feel attainable. Additionally, a lot of my own time has successfully been freed up. I spend far less time editing now than I used to, far less time working on my thumbnails as I used to. And part of that time does just go into production of more videos, being able to script more, being able to start the second channel, and also launching a new offer later this year. That's where a lot of that time is being made up and where a lot of that time for me at least is going. But what's really, really interesting to me and something that I was not expecting was how the channel did not change, which is in terms of its voice and style. One of my biggest fears in making this higher was the fear that my own style would change and that the videos wouldn't feel like they were mine and they would lose kind of that special sauce that I felt brought people into the channel in the first place. But I was wrong. That didn't happen at all. And every single video that we worked on, literally from the very first one, I screenshotted a comment and put it into our wins channel of someone saying that it had that classic Aprilynne alter style. And I was like, man, they can't even tell that someone else contributed to the edit of this versus just me doing it alone. And for a lot of those videos that we've worked on together, those were a lot of people's favorite videos that I have ever made. And I just think it goes to show what sort of value comes from hiring the right person. And also I think what a lot of our fears are in terms of what if nobody understands our style? And I've also realized through this process of working with Joelle that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be either an editor edits the whole thing and it feels completely different, or you edit your whole thing and it feels entirely yours. An editor can edit some of it and you can edit on top of that and make those little tweaks and touches. And hiring Joelle also changed how I feel about my channel as a whole. It's no longer just me against the world. It's now both of us against the world as a team. I now have someone to do the whole YouTube thing with, a genuine friend that I've made over the last 3 months who brings so much perspective and skill and who encourages to do things that would have scared me to do alone. It's been years since I've had a real job outside of YouTube. I've been doing this thing completely alone for 3.5 years. And I think I forgot just how special it is to work alongside someone and to work with someone on the same problems. And the channel feels more alive than it has ever felt before. And that's what it's like working with my first full-time YouTube hire. If you want to learn more about the 4 videos in 4 weeks challenge and what the result of uploading more during that period of time was in terms of channel performance, check out this video. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you can. Keep creating, and I will see you in the next video. Good luck editing this. Gosh, that feels so cheesy. Whew.